So welcome to everyone. Welcome to the board members as well as all of the members of our congregation and friends of the congregation. Tonight is a board update. There's been a number of years where past presidents, as part of their communication with the congregation, have offered a mid-year update. So while the board has been meeting in this virtual environment, we haven't been together since way back in March. We did want to continue that good tradition of being able to give a mid-year update. So this evening we will refresh everyone's memories on the goals that the board has set, and then let you know that activities have been happening even though we have been distant. So first, to start our evening, I have a chalice lighting. So the International Council of Unitarian Universalists distributes a new chalice lighting every month. It's intended to be used as a unifying symbol, a unifying thought of our liberal religion around the world. And oftentimes the original chalice lighting is done in a language other than English. Tonight's was originally written in Portuguese by a lay leader, Daniel Ferrara. And then depending upon availability, the translations may be only to English or sometimes many languages, depending who is available to do the translation. But as I was reading the chalice lighting that was shared for November, I felt that the words really spoke to me and complemented the goals that the board set when we met for a planning retreat last July. And the words are: we light this chalice as a symbol of faith, hope, and love. To face the shadows, a chalice of light. To face inequity, a chalice of justice. To face falsehood, a chalice of truth. To face evil, a chalice of goodness. To face disharmony, a chalice of beauty. May your brightness, manifestation of the infinite light, bless our hearts and our spirits and our lives. May it be so. So as Ministry of Tech, we have a PowerPoint that Luke is going to walk us through, and board members have assigned roles for tonight. So I'm here to welcome you. And the next slide, Luke. Again, I love that this is the way we are living our lives. Our doors are closed because our hearts are open, and it is good to be with you tonight. Our first goal will be, we'll get an update from Joe Lobo.
Well, I think it's a victory that I successfully unmuted, and I will not be speaking in Portuguese. I'll try English. So the first goal, you can read from the board, was to offer opportunities for connection and spiritual care within the pandemic environment. And task one, I would say we've spent the majority of our time on, and the staff has continued to expand options for vibrant online congregational life and engagement in the church. I'll just take a minute and summarize. I think you all know our amazingly talented staff, led by Reverend Luke, has been creating and producing high quality, moving, personally connecting services every week. There have been Zoom coffee hours after each, including additional ones that were in person, socially distanced in the parking lot this fall. In September, we had Welcome Back drive-through, the outdoor craft fair in October, and the Halloween trunk or treat. Since September, we've had these Wednesday evening forums. Choir's been meeting via Zoom, performing at home and via Zoom with a lot of technical assistance. Armchair Travelers has been online monthly. We just had an online trivia night. The book groups continue to meet. Chalice Circles reformed in September, and 70 members are attending these in 7 different groups. In terms of our membership, the number has declined just slightly from 385 to 376, but we think this will be increasing. We have been working toward a definition of virtual membership, and it's been a huge victory for the staff. Now has put together a pathway to membership that is at your own pace, which is an online video course for those interested in being a member, either virtual or in person. There'll be Zoom gatherings at the end of this session. December 6th, I think Reverend Luke and Melissa will be having talk time to help people maybe even sign the book virtually. I'm not sure how that'll be done really, but the caring committee has continued to be making calls and supporting members and with cards and meals. And if you have any other ideas for fellowship or online things, let Melissa Egler know, or Robin Taylor, or any member of the Congregational Life group. So that, I think from just that, you can see there have been a lot of things that we have been able to accomplish on task 1. Task 2, there has been a work group about monitoring practices and advice. Unfortunately, the circumstances have not been good, as you all know, in terms of COVID. So we're kind of in the same manner, kind of staying in a holding pattern with that. And seems likely that's going to continue, certainly for the near term and probably for the longer term, for several months. As you all know, vaccines are just being rolled out, but I think it's highly likely it'll be late spring or even summer before we can get back together, or back into our building. But at least at this point, we can be thinking about task 3, re-entry, but I suspect it will be quite a while for that. We will certainly be monitoring the situation and looking forward to getting back from a virtual congregation to an in-person one. But I think we've been working hard on all 3 of these tasks, and I think that's about all I have to say for those. Thank you.
I'm going to jump in just a second and say that we've put this together with each of the board members, speaking to each of the 4 goals, and we have intended that we will do question and answer at the end to make sure that we get through all of the information, including financial and recent update from Rob. So if you have a question, make a note and we will definitely come back to it. So it's Kim next.
All right, and one of our goals this year was transitioning into a shared ministry governance model. The shared ministry teams have begun to meet. Each team's goal right now is to reflect on best practices for its program area in service to the mission and the goals of the church. Each team also supports subgroups or working groups in their particular area and helping to coordinate that program area. Staff members are part of the team and they set things up and work on the agenda, but each team decides who's going to run the particular meeting. Teams have begun to work on what their goals should be within the new governance system, and the shared ministry program teams for this year are up on the board. We have worship and music. Their subgroups are the worship associates, choirs, featured and guest musicians. And they have Luke and Joe and Austin as the staff members. The board member is Ann Hutton, and then the members at large are Beth Atkinson and Trish Braga. On faith development, those subgroups are classes for all ages, family and parent groups. Those staff are Amy, Derek, and Chantel Fedderson. I serve as the board member on that team, and the members at large are Carmen, Frana, and Marie Davidiak. There's 6 teams altogether. So team 3 might be congregational life. Those subgroups are chalice circles, cook teams, hospitality teams, fellowship activities, and small groups. Melissa Egler is the staff member, and the board members, we have 2 on that one, Sarah and Joe Lobel. And then the members at large are Robin Taylor and Kelly Ray Kirkpatrick. On the social justice team, subgroups are welcoming congregation, racial justice, accessibility and inclusion, immigration, environmental justice, and community volunteering. Luke serves as the staff on that one. The board member is Molly. And Gail Bishop and Adrian are the members at large for that one. The last two shared ministry teams are financial stewardship. The subgroups for that one are the pledge campaign, the service auction, and endowment. Connie Schulke serves as the staff member there, and Rob and Kathy are the board members. And the members at large are John Helmers and Dave Edmondson. And the final shared ministry team is administration. That team's subgroups are property, design, memorial gardens, library, history, communications. Erica and Darren serve as the staff members, and Greg and Dave are the board members. And the members at large are Eric and Barb Foss. One of the big questions that the shared ministry team had on was how we best communicate what happens at meetings with the congregation and with each other. Luke, can you go on to the next slide? So there's a page that's been set up on our website under the member site there, and it's titled Our Governance. So if you click on the member tab, it's the second drop down from there. And on that page, you can find videos of the Zoom meetings that all of the shared ministry teams have had, along with minutes of the meetings. Meetings are open and anyone is welcome to attend at any time. And notice of the meetings is usually found in the e-news, in the weekly e-news. All right, Luke, can you go to the next one? So one of our really big goals this year, or a couple of them, are the task 2 and task 3. And that is reviewing the bylaws and proposing amendments to reflect and strengthen shared ministry, and to review and revise as needed our current policies and procedures, and as necessary, adapt new policies. We did not want to do that before we began exploring shared ministry at our church. So each of the teams, as they begin working together and start to identify areas where the bylaws or the policies and procedures may need adjustment to align with our shared ministry model, they will be working on those. And I think that'll be a big goal for these teams as we move into the second part of the year. We'll be talking about that. So I think that's it for shared ministry.
I think I have goal 3. So goal 3 is striving to create systematic change for justice within our congregation and our community. So the social justice team has been working on this. Our task 1 is to continue to deepen the congressional understanding of justice issues. So we had a public meeting last month to talk about some of the ongoing things that we have going on, like shared plates and just sort of connecting with the different groups that are doing social justice work in the congregation. And you can also look for we'll be doing some of these Wednesday night forums to have some conversations around social justice. So you can look for those in the coming weeks. Our task 2 is to study and consider endorsing the 2020 UUA General Assembly social justice resolutions. So we'll be looking at those and having a conversation with the congregation about some of those. And then finalizing the sex offender risk reduction policy. This has been something that's been in the works for several years. And so coming up with a final draft of that and making a decision about that is on our horizon as well. So that's goal 3.
Okay, this is Greg. I have goal 4. Goal 4 is to continue building our future activities. And the major tasks there are to meet with additional architects and realtors, to clarify the landmark property status with the city. I'll explain that. And to host informational sessions sharing updated information. So I'm going to address this goal and the tasks from a really high level. As you'll notice in a couple of slides, 2 forums are coming up before mid-September, before mid-December rather. Easy to lose track of time during COVID, isn't it? On building our future. So those will be opportunities to get into a lot more detail about building our future than we'll have time to get into tonight. But as a recap, we have a team that has been looking into our the issues with our building and grounds, looking into our needs, and looking into a possible move if that's deemed a good option since late 2018. And the team members are Ann Hutton, Gail Bishop, George Houston, Carmen Frana, Reverend Luke, and myself. Early on, we conducted a congregational survey to find out what you, the congregation, values in a church home. And we visited 6 new or remodeled churches. We visited some of them virtually as well. And we held, and also pre-COVID, we held several congregational sessions to get input. And we met with a local realtor to get a sense of what the land possibilities were out there, what our building and property may be worth. We met with one architect pre-COVID. We had to postpone another meeting. And then we went into a long, quiet spring and summer. But since Labor Day, this group, this team, Building Our Future team, has emerged again. We've picked up the pace a little bit. We met another architect at the church at a social distance, safe social distance, and we visited several potential property sites around town, not to presume anything, but just to get a better sense, since we're an information gathering team, about what's out there should we decide that moving is an option we want to pursue. So as we pursue these goals, we'll continue meetings with experts, realtors, property owners, city officials. Task 2 alludes to the landmark property status. What that has to do is with the potential historical significance of our building, because it's the only building in town that has concrete shingles on the outside. Our status with the city is kind of murky because the city has been slow to develop its standards and processes regarding historical status. But our understanding has been that we have the potential to be on a list that would require us to check with the city before we'd make any significant changes to the character of those concrete shingles on the outside of the building. So that's something that we need to look into in the coming months. We'll be hosting more informational sessions. Again, there's 2 before mid-December. We'll be talking with the UUA. UUA offers any congregation, any UU congregation, its resources to consider what's the right process and the order of steps to follow if you're thinking about building a new church or moving. They advise on what a congregation with your size and your characteristics might expect to raise in terms of money for such a project. So we'll be engaging with them. And at some point, we're going to have a congregational meeting too, to get a congregational vote on the overall no-go or go decision. So that's it in a nutshell. I hope you all will consider coming to one or both of the upcoming forums on Building Our Future to learn more and to offer your input. Thank you.
Okay, I'm pretty close to last, I think, because I can either be very quick or I can fill in the time to make it end about the right time. I just want to hit a few of the highlights of the financial update. Most of these have come out in the e-news, so it's not new. We did raise over $24,000 for the church, and an additional $4,000 for Project Legacy. Really makes me proud to be the treasurer of such a giving congregation. In addition to the auction fundraising, the handcrafted bazaar raised a little over $1,400. So total from fundraisers ended up being just a little bit shy of 26,000. Our budget was 23, so we're doing actually pretty well there. As of the end of October, this is pre getting any auction proceeds in there. Our income was 118% of our projection, and expense was 87%. So that's all looking good. I always have to caution people that our expenses are not always linear. Sometimes we don't know when the expenses going to happen, so we just budget 1/12 each month. And so while we may be running under, there could be an expense that comes up in January or February that instead of budgeting that month, we put 1/12 in each month. So while it looks good, it's still something that we have to keep an eye on as we go. It's pretty standard for us to do that. And November data should be coming soon with month end on Monday. I would expect sometime next week, Connie will have that information out to us to look at. So again, that's the highlights. I was very thrilled that the auction raised so much being online. Much like everybody else, I kind of miss the face-to-face camaraderie, if you will. Getting to visit, say hi, and all that stuff. But of course, in current times, that just is not possible. So the auction team really kicked it in high gear and got an online auction going for us, which did extremely well. So I think we should all be thankful for that team getting that done, doing the testing. Thank all the congregation for their donations, both in items for the auction as well as for purchasing as much as everybody did. So as we set this budget together, that 23,000 was that 23,000 that we budgeted for seemed to be the biggest concern in the budget, whether or not we could make that if we couldn't have the face-to-face auction. Turns out that everybody did a wonderful job and we exceeded it, so that was a very good thing. So I think that's it for the financial update. There is a slide or two on upcoming events that I will, I think, pass back to Anne.
Thank you to all the board members for your concise information. So in addressing goal 4, you can see, as Greg mentioned, we've got 2 forums. It will provide information, more detailed information that we received from the architect, give you some more detailed information about the range of prices of property that are available in this Rochester environment, that we know that the DMC is well on its way to developing many different pieces of property in town. And then for goal 3, as Molly mentioned, we have a number of things already in the works, as well as 2 of our common reads. The first is A Good Time for Truth, Race in Minnesota, which is a One Book, One Minnesota title this summer and into the fall. And that will be followed then in February for Black History Month with Just Mercy, which many of you may have already read. So a good chance to reread or watch the movie. So we'll be discussing those 2 titles as part of our efforts to become more acquainted with issues of racism in our time, in our community, as well as in Minnesota. At this point, for anyone who is in tonight's virtual audience, this is a time for you to ask your board any questions you might have.
I have a comment. So this is Pat Wimmer. I appreciate everything, the hard work everyone's been doing. It's just fabulous. And I've been thinking about our building. And to me, at this point in time, I see we are so much more than our building. How we have connected together and kept it together. To me, right now, this point in time, I just think, I'm just looking forward to getting back together. And maybe we don't have the greatest playground for our children, and maybe we don't have this or that, but I love our building. And I'm not sure, as time even goes on, how much I will want to support these wonderful changes that sounded so good in the past. So that's just my feeling and my opinion. But thank you for the real hard work everyone's done on that.
Thanks, Pat. Anyone else have a question or a comment?
So Anne,
Yes.
this is Jerry Katzman. As we've moved into shared ministry, we're learning how to do things a new way. And a lot is on the shoulders of our staff, especially as we're starting this up. A lot of new responsibilities, a lot of figuring out how to get things done. Do you have a sense of how the staff is holding up and reacting to this? Could you or Luke address that?
I'll jump in since I'm unmuted, and then I'll let Luke do a more overview. I've been in the building a couple of times as Richard and I were in to decorate for Christmas. For this Sunday, you will see that it has a different look as we go into our normal holiday season. While I was in the building, completely masked and socially distanced, I did have a chance to talk with a couple of staff members. I would say that their sentiments, their feelings are that they are probably as frustrated as we are that we can't be together, but I'm just amazed by their creativity and their continual ability to figure out that we would normally do it this way, and oh, by the way, we're going to do it a different way this year. So I think at least from talking with a number of them individually, the sense is that they're mentally healthy. And I think Luke can give a much better, because I've only talked with a few people, Luke can give you a much better overview of the staff he is supervising.
Thanks, Ann, and thanks, Jerry, for the question. We have a joke on staff that we say pretty much every staff meeting, which are now all on Zoom, that we're doing pandemic fine. So it's a constant qualifier. We're fine. I mean, we're pandemic fine. In that it's difficult. As you all know in your own lives, the sense of isolation, the sense of uncertainty, in addition to some staff having children in their homes doing school in the living room or wherever, and figuring all that out, and spouses in their own professions figuring out how to work from home and all that. It's a really complicated, hard time. And at the same time, I think our staff has shifted into a sense of creativity in some new ways of how can we possibly make this not horrible? How can we find some spontaneity and some fun as much as possible through this time so that people's souls feel slightly lifted? And I think that process helps us because we feel like we're able to give something and help hold the church together the best way we have skills for, clunky and messy as we sometimes feel at it, and unprepared for it as we all feel. But I think by and large, the staff has that sense of purpose, and here's regular appreciation from the congregation, which is so necessary and so appreciated. I think they feel appreciated. I know I do. Appreciated and supported by not only our board, but the congregation more widely. And that helps tremendously when we come into a quiet church and is anybody here? And we know that you are in spirit. So we're doing all right. When we had to go back to, we had some some staff meetings that were distanced and masked for a short time when numbers weren't quite so horrible. And of course, that shifted back this fall. And it kind of, it's a little bit of flashback back to March when we first had to do that. And that was a hard shift back. But I think we're finding our groove again and trying to bring whatever light we can in these months to come. So I think that's it. Thank you though.
Other comments or questions? Tricia.
Yes, this goes back to the staff. I just am always amazed at how well the staff has punted and put things together. I think that the format of our services is lovely with the opportunity. You can see it on YouTube, you can see it on your computer, you can see it on Facebook, how it's blended together. I love the way that we're now partially back, that the worship associates can come in and Reverend Luke can come in and we can do part of the service in the sanctuary with the chalice, and how Amy has been so creative in doing the way that she does the books, and again the auction, the ability to go out and find the software and be able to do an auction online, and again now coming up with the mitten tree, being able to do that online, and just the creativity of how the technology has been able to work, and going out and finding these resources that we can use and that are clear enough to be used by those of us who are less than tech savvy. So I just can't say enough about what the staff has been able to pull together, and the sermons are always wonderful, and it's just the best part of my week. So I just want to thank you all for everything that you're doing and all the people working behind the scenes as well on the committees.
Trish, you've said, I think you sort of expressed what we're all feeling, and I see a number of people either hitting the positive hand clapping icon or giving jazz hands. So thank you for summarizing what we are all feeling. Any other questions for any of the board members or comments that you would like to share tonight in this group? Randy or Anita?
Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay. If we have a little bit of time, I wouldn't mind doing a little deeper dive because I'm curious about what some of the social justice resolutions were at the General Assembly in 2020.
And my comment was, I was just, as Trish was talking, I am just wondering, I see a lot of the same faces at some of the events. I'm thinking, are there people that haven't been connecting, maybe that either don't do the technology, don't like the technology, and I'm just thinking of outreach to those individuals. So just a thought.
Well, I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'll speak about the families, and just saying that we've been averaging about 30 kids pre-K to 5th grade who are participating each month in something, in getting the Spirit Kid kits, which if you look at any given Sunday, that's way more than we have in attendance on a Sunday. And granted, it's just once a month, but we're as far as families go, I feel like we're getting a lot of those. And I know that I don't see a lot of families like on these, between the coffee hours and the Wednesday night forums. So as far as that's concerned, I'm feeling very confident and happy in how that's turning out. When we have tease me, I'm sure saying I often will take attendance at those events, and so we do have an ongoing kind of track of who is showing up for things like water communion, or even like when Santa Impromptu came on Friday night, just kind of keeping tabs on people. And we do definitely get different people coming to different events. So I hope that helps a little bit.
And
So
I might add, oh, go ahead, Ann, please.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say the caring coordinators, of course, are connecting with a lot of folks who may not be connecting in some of the tech ways as well. So making calls, writing cards. Of course, Melissa's doing that as well in her work, trying to make sure people are connected. So that's happening quite a bit. And it is hard to know, you know, churches are doing things differently these days. Some have live worship on Zoom where you see who's there. We don't, and we chose that for a variety of reasons. But it has its benefits, but the drawback is we don't know who's watching. All we know is amount of views. From that, we know that more people are watching our services than would ever come on a Sunday morning. By the end of the week, between YouTube and Facebook, we have probably 300 views or so, sometimes more, depending. So, and then maybe a couple people on each. So, but it's a weird thing to not know who that is that we assume the majority of those are from our congregation, but we also know anecdotally and other ways as people communicate with us that there are folks in Iowa, there are folks in Germany, there are folks, you know, wherever that are connecting. So it's a weird thing, but yes, I'd say both volunteers and staff are trying to connect with those folks. And that's been a question on the Congregational Life team recently about how to reach out to those, especially in these next few months, who maybe we haven't seen or heard from, and may not be as tech savvy or have that access for whatever reason, to make sure we're reaching out to them in some old school ways, phone calls and cards and homing pigeon, whatever it takes. But thank you for lifting that up, Anita.
And so I ducked off screen because I knew I had in the pile underneath my standing desk the copies of the 2 resolutions. So as were mentioned in our goals, there were 2 resolutions passed at the General Assembly that was held, what was supposed to have been held in Providence, Rhode Island, and in a quick turn of events from April until June. The entire conference went virtual. So the resolutions were passed at the normal general meetings that would have been held with voting delegates. So the first was because of being on the East Coast and very cognizant of the fact of this being the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the Mayflower, there was an Indigenous Peoples resolution, specifically because of where we were and tribal land issues that are in litigation, to support the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe of the Standing Rock Nation. But then to broaden it for the UUA, that it was also to work with and to be aware of all Indigenous peoples' struggle to preserve their lands, waters, peoples, sacred sites, and sovereignty. So looking ahead to what might we be able to do, as well as how do we build our awareness of those Indigenous people in Minnesota who share this beautiful state with us. And the second resolution was to look to means to create systemic change in our congregation by supporting uprisings and spiritual and material resources to fight racism. So a very broad topic on racism, certainly influenced by the UUA's support of Black Lives Matter, but broader than just Black Lives Matter, that idea that racism affects many individuals within our society. And yes, Molly.
Yeah, the social justice team hasn't really started to consider these yet. So maybe this is something that we can loop into our Wednesday forums in January, when we're talking about social justice issues. This might be something that we can talk about as part of those as well, those resolutions.
We're getting close on time. I want to be respectful of everybody's evening schedule, but if there are any last questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got a couple related to the auction. I think everyone is breathing a sigh of relief. I have worked on the auction for numerous years and was involved in this one. And I think if you had asked our small team in July if this was going to happen, we would have said very doubtful. But you know, we had enough people working to figure it out that we finally got it figured out. And so Bruce Borgum, Beth Plumhoff, Nate Harf, who did a mountain of work on the website, and John Helmers. It was a big hurdle. And even 2 weeks before the auction, looking at the number of items, again, we were real close to pulling the plug. So the fact that it made the goal and went over the goal is a huge relief. So I just think it's important for the board and staff and everybody to understand that, you know, this definitely took a village. And the other thing, kind of, I know Pat Wimmer had some cautions there. I know this is maybe an ideal time for the Building Our Future group to be doing their research, but I think we should be very cautious right now in the state that we're in, where you can't talk face to face, you can't, you're not going to get everybody on a Zoom session for a congregational meeting. I think that's a big ask, and I think you need to be very cautious about rushing through it before we can be in person again. So it's just my 2 cents.
Thanks, Linda and Bill. We will certainly, the Building Our Future team will consider that. So I think we've reached our time. I thank Luke for acting as our technical minister. Luke, do you have anything else to add for tonight? And then you can wrap us up.
Nothing else to add other than gratitude to all the folks who have been doing 1,000 different things to hold the congregation together, and gratitude to this board, who is visionary and thoughtful and supportive and wise and kind and devoted to the well-being of this church deeply, and showing up in ways I wouldn't have been able to imagine a year ago and hope to never see again. But we're moving through this time with such beauty, and that is a gift. And for that, and the gift of all your faces, and the ability to eventually come back into this space incarnate, in physical space together, I so look forward to. But in the meantime, we're doing all right. As my grandpa would say, we're doing good enough, nothing to complain about. So thank you for your leadership, and thanks for joining in.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for participating.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.